I want to talk about Armon Watts joins the Pittsburgh Steelers. The contract details haven't been announced yet. Big D tackle, 6'5", 307 pounds. Started 12 games for the Bears last year. He's a former 6th-round pick for the Minnesota Vikings. Guy's got 57 games and 22 starts under his belt, 8 sacks, 125 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 15 QB hits, 3 forced fumbles. Like it's not a bad resume for a guy entering just the 5th year of his NFL career. You know, you see the signing. I think when we saw the Braden Fehoko signing, you looked at it and said, oh, well, this is an option at nose tackle. You looked at Armon Watts and you said, oh, maybe this is an even better option at both nose tackle or just for depth for the defensive line.
Yeah. I think the versatility is a good point. He can play a couple different positions. He has experience there, but I'm most impressed by the size, and I think that's the biggest part. That's their biggest need along the defensive line in my mind, is just a true nose tackle, someone who can eat up space and move guys and be unmovable a little bit. Like, just take up. Like, I don't need him to get 8, 9, 10 sacks or whatever. I just need him to take up space and let Cam Hayward and TJ Watt cook and Alex Highsmith cook. Like, that's the thing. The Steelers needed defensive line help, but you didn't need a superstar. You didn't need to land anyone super impressive. So this is a super solid signing. We'll see what the financials look like, but from all reports and what it looks like right now, without knowing how much they're paying him, this seems like a great move.
Great move. I agree. Do you look at this and immediately think he's the starter? He's the favorite to start at nose tackle right now?
Yeah, he has to be, right? Like, it's I don't know there's no one else.
Fehoko
really.
or Montravius Adams, but
right, like,
Adams is more of like a third down guy. He's pretty much all pass rush. Fehoko, he had a good, strong end of the year, but I don't know. I think my big thing right now is that even if there are a couple of question marks, the Pittsburgh Steelers have given themselves options on the defensive line, across the defensive line. You now have depth. You now have a nose tackle. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, you looked at this group and you were like, are they ignoring it? Like, do they just not care about anybody on the defensive line? Isaiah Loudermilk is just not the guy. Like, Carlos Davis is gone, or they're running out of options. And you just started thinking, well, it's got to be the NFL draft. It's got to be the NFL draft. Then you start looking at, and we just looked this up before, we just put the list together before the show, is that they've only brought in 3 defensive tackles for pre-draft visits. I'm sure that they're going to draft a defensive lineman. I'm like almost positive about it. But the fact that they're not doing a bunch of homework there, makes you nervous. Now you make the signing and you go, oh, okay. Well, now they have options. Maybe they only need one more option. Maybe they only need a Keanu Benton or a Gervon Dexter or a Siaki Ika. Maybe they only need one guy to come in here and just, fill a role to learn with DeMarvin Leal, and hopefully Isaiah Loudermilk turns into something. But at the same time, you have veteran depth. You're like, okay, well, he could play and he could be an impact player, and that's enough. Because last year, I mean, you got to think, like, last year, dude, like Tyson Alualu was getting playing time. Shouldn't have got playing time. Like, he was past his career. And I love Tyson. I think he's a great dude, but there's just nothing left in the tank there. You didn't have any depth on the defensive line. I think now you do. That's got to be, huge. I think the next thing is, do you look at this as like the end of a guy like Chris Wormley? Do you say, like, now the positions are filled, why would we bring somebody like that back?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't know what role he can fill that you're not, especially if you're going to draft another defensive lineman, and that's the other thing about the draft, is that this goes from a real pressing need that you might have to spend a day 2 pick on.
Yeah.
And now you can afford to spend a day 3 pick on it. Like, you're making yourself more flexible in the draft, but then also in free agency, like you just said, like, you don't need Chris Wormley. Like,
No.
Kind of plain and simple. Like, he's not better than a lot of, like, I don't know if all
Either
the
of them,
guys,
I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where he would fit in if you kept him. It would be kind of a guy burning a hole in the bench and on the roster. It's if he even makes, like, would he make the roster? He would make the roster.
I think he'd make the roster, but I think it'd push a guy like Isaiah Loudermilk out. And I'm not necessarily ready to give up on Isaiah Loudermilk yet.
Exactly.
I'm not looking for him to play, but I'm looking for him to have an opportunity to earn playing time. But I agree with you. I think that right now, the Steelers head into the NFL draft and you look at, we'll just assume that Watts is the starting nose tackle. You got Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, and Armon Watts. And then you got DeMarvin Leal backing up Larry Ogunjobi, Fehoko and Adams backing up Watts. And both Fehoko and Watts can play two positions on the defensive line. I mean, Watts has played across the defensive line. And then you hopefully have Isaiah Loudermilk that could become a primary backup for Cam Hayward. And then if you draft somebody, I mean, that all of a sudden your defensive line looks pretty good. It looked real rough 2 weeks ago. Right now it looks totally fine. They've spent almost no money on it, on guys with a little bit of upside on a position that, I mean, Mike Tomlin explained this to me a couple of years ago. I felt like an idiot when I asked the question, but I was like, why was it so easy for Montravius Adams to come in here in week 13 off of a practice squad and immediately make an impact, become a starter, and have like no issues adjusting to your defense? And he was like, he plays nose tackle and they don't do anything except for go straight. And I was like, all right, well, that's all I need to know. Cool beans. I think that was their expectation, is why would we go spend $80 million on Javon Hargrave when we could just get, Armon Watts for $1 million and say, well, he's got one role, and that role is to just stand there in the middle of the field and not get blocked. So,
right. It's to be 310 pounds and 6'5". Like, he can absolutely do that.
He can do that. Waking up in the morning, he's capable of doing that.
Right.
No effort whatsoever. So I agree. I think that right now the Steelers defensive line looks very, very good. I think you alluded to this, but you don't see any changes you see a minor change, but nothing significant to their draft plans because of it.
No, I mean, it eliminates something like, we talked about last week, like maybe trading up or seeing if Jalen Carter can land in their lap.
Yeah. Which is, again, like a guy, I mean, not to go back, but if Jalen Carter's sitting there at 9 and you're sitting there at 9, you draft Jalen Carter over Christian Gonzalez. I think I'm still going Christian Gonzalez.
Oh, yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. Immediate need, no risk. Your guy. All right. I agree. All right. But it removes the need to move up.
Yeah. And it also, it removes the need to move up for a guy like Jalen Carter, but it means you have more flexibility in your day 2 picks to address some kind of other need. And instead you can just wait till day 3. You can find someone who's decent. You can find a good value and you're feeling good about it.
I agree. I think you could look at it and say this defensive line class is very good. They have a lot of flexibility. You could draft a guy like Gervon Dexter and say, well, this guy's raw, but we got plenty of space to develop him. Isaiah Loudermilk was raw. We could continue to develop him. I don't think it puts like a major dent in their plans or changes much of anything, but I think it does take some pressure off and allows them to, kind of readjust. I think that the defensive line class is very good. So, you want to dip into it a little bit, but if you take one of the 3 guys that you've brought in for a visit, I think that's enough for you to say, all right, well, here we go. This is it. And they're not coming in here to start. They're not coming in here to do anything. They're coming in here to be DeMarvin Leal, play off the bench, make a rookie impact, and kind of begin
learn
to
a little
develop. Bit. Yeah, exactly. Like in 3 years 3 years, 2 years, whatever, like the Steelers defensive line could be set for a whole new generation of defensive linemen in, either Bennett, Dexter, Ika, whoever, DeMarvin Leal, and hopefully somebody else. And, they've built that through the draft with mid-round picks, and you got to feel really good about that if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. All Steelers Talk has officially launched their own clothing brand, Black and Gold Apparel, now available on bonfire.com or at the shop tab at our YouTube page. Your new favorite place for Steelers t-shirts, sweatshirts, and crew necks, now out, now available in multiple designs, including some of my favorites, Kenny Comeback, Mute, and Kenny DeGeorge. Check them all out at bonfire.com or on the shop tab at our YouTube page.